for a bit more. So, is Dale ready? Okay. Hey! I feel... Thank you very much. Right. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Very good. You can't see too much. I'll be honest. It's a bit cool in here. Yeah. First of all, thank you for coming for the final, and it's good to see you all out again. You've had a big day, lots of information, lots of PMO stuff. So we're going to pull back the mood a little bit and just relax. The whiskey's for me, not for you. And usually when we do these podcasts, Dale and I already have a guest. We're ready to go. We're locked in. And we've done this 100 times. And almost every time I get the name wrong. So I will not be calling out the name today. But we do have a box. By show of hands, who put their name in this box here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. Do you know why you put your name in the box? Oh, excellent. So we have a bit of a treat for you today. The guest who will be joining us today on the podcast will come out of this box and Dale will announce their name perfectly.
So you're letting me stuff up?
If I do it,
yeah,
it's going to be bad.
But you're more English than me. We just looked at your genealogy and...
This is true.
Yeah. You're actually 10% Scottish. He's 10% Scottish.
The bottom half.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very good. So, if your name is called out and you do not want to be a guest, we will not accept that. We might give you a shorter duration, perhaps, because I know it's difficult to speak to so many different people and talk about different subjects. The other thing we haven't talked about is the subject matter.
Yeah, what is the subject?
I have no idea. But I heard this is a PMO conference, so maybe we'll think about that. But we did have a good keynote this morning, and we talked about all sorts of things related to PMO and AI. And I've noticed now some people are looking at my legs, and it's making me very uncomfortable. You look great today, by the way, Dale.
Thank you, as do you. So, should we crack on?
Let's go.
One of the strap lines we have, so this is totally unscripted, as you can probably tell, but one of the strap lines we do have is raw, informal, but informative. So we are raw, we're Australian, South African. We're quite informal at this stage, but hopefully our guests will be informative, so we'll leave that up to the guests. So without further ado, let's see who we've got here. Is there a drum roll, Bell?
Drum roll.
There's the drum roll. Okay.
That's a big name.
Michael Reynders.
Michael Reynders.
Michael, there we go.
Get on down here, sir.
Welcome, Michael. Would you care for a...
Thanks, Dale. But as you know, where I come from, it would probably be better brandy and Coke.
Oh, absolutely, but we're in Scotland, so when in Scotland...
Not a problem. I see I'm not dressed appropriately, though.
Yeah, do you want to go get changed?
I'll do that in a sec.
Perfect. So usually, well, cheers to you, first of all.
Yeah, cheers,
down.
Michael.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers. Cheers to the audience.
Cheers.
It's the first time I've been able to drink at a PMO conference that's not finished yet. So we beat you all. This is great. So usually when we kick off the podcast, we usually ask the origin story. How did you get into projects? How do you get into the profession you're in? We're going to kick off the same way. Nice and easy. And then we get really vicious right at the end, and we just go hammer. But we'll also ask some of the audience for questions as well. So there are some opportunities. We've got a hot mic roaming somewhere. You guys can chime in. This is a live podcast. In fact, this is the first one we've done together live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever.
First live audience, which would be amazing. So when we do open up to any Q&A, or if you want to get involved, I think there's some mics down the stairs, and you can just sort of walk across and we can have a chat. But yeah, this is exciting. I'm really excited about this, not just because I've had a sip of that whiskey, which is delicious, by the way.
Very good, yes.
But Michael, so tell us about, I'm just going to be careful there. Tell us about you. So we heard South Africa. Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? How did you start off, and what got you to where you are today?
Well, so it's quite something to have this all unscripted. But yeah, Michael Reynders. I live in Cape Town, South Africa. I had the opportunity to come to the Netherlands last weekend. My parents live there, and then heard the PMO conference was on in Edinburgh this week. So I've been a project manager background. I did some good planning. The next thing I heard is that the Springboks were playing Scotland at Murrayfield on Sunday, so I managed to get a ticket for that. So a great week so far, and a fantastic day today as well. By way of background, grew up in South Africa, studied at the University of Bath, so I had the opportunity to live and study in the UK, did a degree in engineering. After graduating, moved back to South Africa and worked in the engineering field in chemical process development. But I always say my career was a bit of circumstance and opportunity. So the circumstance was that the department I was working in got taken over by a research and development scientific organization, parastatal, fantastic for all of the guys that were scientists, because they could carry on doing their research. I was more interested in the business side of things. And that's when I made the switch to project management, around about 2000, 2000. IT project management was a big step up. I'd say over that period of time, I learned a lot. Fortunately, still got my hair, although it's a lot grayer now. But then moved into PMO management a little bit later on, a couple of years later. And I think that's, for me, is the essence, the difference between project management as a practitioner as opposed to a PMO manager. And that's really where my interest is. I work in the healthcare industry for a private hospital group running their business project portfolio. So not the construction projects, but the business project. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And it is exactly how we start all podcasts, because everybody in PMO has some interesting story. They didn't start out in PMO. They started in some other organization or some other discipline, and then they slowly kind of leaned into PMO just for inspiration and motivation reasons. What was it that specifically interested you in PMO as a role?
Yeah, I think the challenges of being in the trenches of project management and actually managing the delivery, that was one thing. I think the organizing a team of project managers and then also being involved in the selection of projects as a portfolio management function of the PMO was really the sort of step up that I was looking for. So I've got a good team of project managers in my enterprise project office. I go back into the trenches. I'm not a good project manager anymore.
Yeah, I think things have certainly evolved. I think, throughout the journey today, probably a lot of the folk here have picked up various tips and hints that they'll take back, and we continuously evolving. We spoke this morning about how PMOs must adapt, and I think, what you're saying is true. I think the other thing that's probably worth understanding from you, you've gone to a few of the talks today. Were there any particular things that stood out for you that you're going to take back?
Yeah, well, we started this morning with AI. Giving away my age, I'm in my 50s, so the whole concept of AI is not really something I've paid a whole lot of attention to, but certainly people in my team, the project managers, are saying, well, how can we use those tools? So that was great. Just knowing that that's part of my PMO journey, is reinventing yourself. You've got to mature continuously. It's one thing doing projects right and getting them done and getting some recognition for that, but your organization changes and the kind of projects you do change as well. And so you need to be aware of what's coming up. So certainly the AI, I'll get the youngsters in the team to look into that. But then moving a bit more to the traditional stuff and the resource management. The two of the talks I attended had a very big prioritization and resource management aspect. And I always say that there's an art and science to project management. So the science is the hard stuff, the risk management, the delivery management. The art is the people side of things. I think the resource management has more art than science to it. So that's sort of the takeaway I've had. And then just on maybe a more comical note, it was a fantastic venue. So moved to the Great Hall and then to the library. Fascinating just looking at all of those books. I just did have a sense that I had to keep an eye over my shoulder that Professor Plum with the wrench wasn't behind me.
Does it give you inspiration to perhaps do a library like that? Because that's a fantastic library.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm a good enough reader to get through all of that.
You don't have to read the books, you just have to have them on display.
Well, and also just to have the photo in the library, it looks very exactly. Important.
Can we pick on the first one you mentioned? Taking things back and, as you put it, the youngsters changing things up. But how do you manage change, right? Because change is really, really difficult. Do you always have to hire in a change manager? Do you have to put into a transformation project? How do we go about changing things in an organization from a PMO perspective?
Yeah, and it's great because that was one of the things that we actually had to change ourselves, is understanding that project management is really good on the delivery side of things. Landing the projects and getting adoption is a whole different discipline. So the change management discipline comes in there. And that's one of the competencies we've built into our project office over time. It wasn't there on day one. It was just project management. We've built up the competency of business analysis, change management, and also project administration. So if we are going to embark on a change in the way of we do things in the PMO, then absolutely we need to practice what we preach and have a change approach to that. And that's very much about preparing for the change, actually executing the change, and then sustaining it. So that's the change management theory. But to do it properly, you have to make sure that your change management covers all of those aspects. And that's something that we do try and do if we're introducing a change, step up from project to program management, that we utilize the principles of change management, because it's actually a transformation for the PMO in its own right.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think, by the way, can we give him a round of applause? Michael is killing this as a guest, isn't he? It just sounds like you've done this all before. You've probably done a few podcasts, yeah?
I've never done a podcast. I'm just a bit worried that my kids are going to go look it up and listen to it now.
It's all recorded, yeah.
And just for the record, we don't know each other. Yeah,
no. So it was a bit of trepidation. I put my name in the hat. I've never won anything in my life, so I suppose a sip of whiskey, it's a great start.
Yeah, your luck is up. Your luck is up. You mentioned as well maybe some themes around where you see, because we talked a little bit about the futurescaping of PMO this morning, if you missed the keynote, where, because you were in the trenches, as you said, in PMO, where do you see PMO going? What do you see the big kind of uplifts are going to be, and what areas over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so that's very similar to our own journey. Started as an IT PMO and then moved more into the enterprise project office environment. So one of the key things is positioning. Often you don't get to choose that. The organization determines that, but you can try and influence it. So we're very fortunate in my organization that we positioned within the strategy department, which means that we aligned with strategy execution and getting the things that are supposedly important to the business done, so big business transformation projects. So I think, one of the things is, if you're not there yet, is work towards, aligning yourself with the correct department. Then it's basically the science part, the skills you need to maintain. Just keep that going, and that's why this is a fantastic opportunity yesterday as well. From a PMO perspective, there's not many better environments than this to learn about PMO stuff. There's a lot of things that cater for business analysts and project managers, but the discipline of PMO. And then I think what keeps me going, hopefully keep me going for another few years, is being able to bring successful change in the organization through project delivery or even transformation of the way things get done. So ways of working is definitely something that you need to look at. So future trends, yes, the resource management's a tough nut to crack. I think, and taking away from this morning as well, is that things like AI definitely are going to benefit us. I've always said that project managers need to use project administrators to assist them to do the thinking and heavy lifting, of the difficult tasks. AI can also assist us in that way. So I'll certainly keep a lookout for those trends, not just because you spoke about it this morning, but because a lot of my team are already interested in that.
That's great. I just got one follow-up around this is the workforce is changing as well, and I think with the PMO, we have a different generation coming into PMO, and one of the things is about attracting and engaging people to join PMO organizations, but how do we get them to come and join the PMO organization, the younger generation who have different ideals about what hard work looks like, how they want to work, what they think is value adding, and particularly more kind of technology savvy. What's your method of dealing or bringing in young talent?
Yeah, and I think that's the quantum shift in terms of work now is work-life balance. So the good old days of driving into the office, sitting in the traffic, spending an hour or more than that in the traffic, and then having 8 hours in the office and doing the same 5 days a week, that's gone. So you do need to adapt in terms of being able to function properly within a PMO environment with a hybrid work from home, work from office. But don't neglect the work from office, because that collaboration that you have in person with your team is important. But then just schedule it properly. We all good schedulers, supposedly, as project managers. Have your team meetings on one specific day so that everybody comes in, there's a good vibe, there's a great vibe in the office. Everybody says they're much more productive when they work from home and can have the virtual meetings because you can select who can come. You're not bound by a meeting room booking, or you're not bound by somebody not being in the office that day. So I think work-life balance is a key thing, and then you've got to make it exciting. So that's absolutely where technology, if you can use technology to benefit the work, there's a lot of people, youngsters out there that are keen to adapt to technology to do things better, much better than I can do in my 50s.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult actually to keep things fresh and exciting. And we've spoken to a lot of people in the podcast where there's also this balance of trying to give everyone, not just youngsters, a sense of, I'm part of something that's bigger than me. I'm contributing to the world. And if you actually boil it down, most people that work in PMOs and projects actually are contributing to things that impact other people. And so you are impacting other people's lives. It just doesn't feel like it all of the time because you're perhaps looking at a computer screen. But then the other thing comes into play as well is in terms of the generations where, the younger folk, and there's the sense, and we've spoken about this on the podcast before, there's a sense of perhaps entitlement and instant gratification. And sometimes you say resilience, I say patience, right? You say that the younger generation lacks a bit of resilience. I think it's patience to earn the stripes. How do we balance that? Because you have some fantastic people coming into the industry, but if we don't keep them engaged, if we don't fulfill their needs, they won't stay. Yet, we do know that there is a certain element of you need to bide your time. How do you manage that? Because, there are managers here in the audience, and they're probably thinking the same, is I have to contend with various generational attitudes towards work. Right? There's some folk that have never worked pre-COVID that understand going in 5 days a week is normal, right? How do you do that?
And then you've got those that are just starting out in their careers, and coming into office is definitely not normal because they did school, not going to a school. So I think it is, first of all, trust is an important aspect. You've got to trust people that they are competent in what you've hired them to do, and give them those opportunities to learn. Sometimes learn by mistakes, but then you need to be there to support them. So I would say trust people's capabilities.
Do you start with trust from the outset?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You start from a position of trust, and then you let people lose it.
Yes, that's right. So yes, I mean, it's not a case of your trust needs to be gained. It's a case of I've hired you, or you're part of the team to do a job. I trust that you have the capability to do that. So it's probably a trust in capability. If that capability is lacking, well, then there's other mechanisms to be able to support that. So that would probably be the second one, is trust and then support. And that support is sometimes in competencies. We've experienced a lot of challenges with people having mental health challenges as a result of the pandemic. Life is much more stressful. Provide that support environment. If that is maybe just changing your project mix into, if it's possible, a less complex project, or a project that align better with your capabilities. If it's a paint by numbers project and that's all you're capable of doing at the moment, the complexity is too much, align that. So trust and support. And then the last aspect I think that is crucial is fun. We need to have fun doing what we're doing. You know, it's important. You're spending a lot of time at work. So create that environment. So one of the things that we did is that we changed our project feedback sessions. As a team, we get the project manager to almost showcase their project. We changed that to a project story. And by changing it to a project story, we also said bringing a personal aspect. So there was one of the guys that spoke about how his passion is cycling. And then he matched that to his project, how going uphill, doing the Cape Town Cycle August tour that we have, how that made him think about that's the heavy lifting on the project that you've got to do. Once you get to the top of the hill and you're coming down the other side, then that's when you recharge. So I think that was fun. We learned a little bit about him. He had the opportunity to share about his project, and everybody has actually embraced that as fun. And you know, the best way to do it is if you're having an in-person meeting, just make sure there's snacks, because people then come. So whiskey's even better.
Oh, yeah. And a good whiskey at that. I mean, Val, you're particularly good at being relating to people at, you know, in various audiences, and you know, giving Michael a chance to take a sip there. How do you go about, I guess, when you're looking at audience? You know, you've got a room full of various personalities here. How do you adjust when you go and sort of try and formulate how you're communicating to engage those team members?
Well, for me, it's simple and it's difficult, because we live in a world where everyone wants to be part of a group at the moment, and that kind of doesn't work if you want to get to know someone intimately. And so there's layers of kind of social masks that we wear when we're at work, when we're at home, when we're with our friends, when we're socially being entertaining. And it's something to be said about just understanding the person. You said something about trust before. And trust's interesting. But there's something that before trust that has to happen, because you can't trust everybody. Maybe you can. And you can't like everybody. Maybe you can. But likability scale, and this is how we hire in our company, we've got to like them to start with. And that seems very, very discriminatory, right? But there needs to be some level of chemistry that's unspoken. It's a non-verbal cue that there's going to be some synergies between us. And that helps us spark. And that spark is something that I can't define here today. Maybe a bit more whiskey, I can go into detail. But it's at an individual level. And it's not something that you can do at a group level. So when I address someone, it's the person I'm addressing, not the colours that they wear or the dresses, you know. It's important that you kind of understand where they're coming from. And humour is a great caveat. It's a great connector. I think one of the things that Dale and I did when we used to work together in PMOs is just finding something to have fun about, because work and life is hard enough. And so we don't want to come into work and start beating everybody up. And I've seen this, particularly with the younger generation, just not working because they just don't respond to that. So the response mechanism is that you need to treat everyone as an individual and look for the spark. There's got to be a commonality between two people. And there's logical senses in this as well. If you want to play the linguistics game, you can find logical levels where at some point you find common ground with somebody. And you can do this all day. There's plenty of examples out there on the internet.
Yeah. One of the things Val did particularly well when we were working together is his one-on-ones with the team. He brought a basketball in, and there was a basketball hoop at the back of the office. You remember this?
I do, yeah.
And he used to do his one-on-ones playing basketball with them. It was hilarious watching because often he'd have a team member that couldn't play basketball. So it would go all over the show, it would miss. But they'd remember the chats, right? Because you're doing something physical, you're doing something different, you're outside of the office, you're engaging one-on-one. The other thing that I find very good is speed dating. So often as managers, you might inherit a team of people and you don't know them. And the best way is go for a coffee, grab them, tell me about you. Just tell me about you. What do you do? Why do you do what you do? I actually had a colleague when I first worked with her a couple of years ago, and I asked her, why do you do what you do? And she'd been working at this organization for 16 years. She said, you know what, Dale, that's the first time anyone has asked me that. And she broke down. Often we don't ask people personal questions because we're afraid, but you're working with people. You need to get to know them, and you need to build the relationship. You can give the trust up front, but you need to build the relationship and work on it as well.
And it's about connecting. I mean, if you connect as a team, then you're definitely stronger together. And it's just a simple thing that we've done when somebody new has joined the team. It's a bit of an icebreaker. But if you just use that, make up 3 facts about yourself. 1 is untrue. People told me, oh no, I'm uncomfortable, you're making me lie. And that's not the case. I'm just, make up 3 facts. 1 is untrue. You learn 2 things about somebody, and then you also learn, maybe a bit about their humor, why they chose the 1 fact that wasn't true.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think we want to get the audience involved before you all fall asleep. I know you're all thirsty because you're watching us drinking whiskey thinking, where's mine? This bottle isn't big enough, so Dale's on a budget. But if anyone's got any questions for any of us here on the pod... Oh, I didn't have... That was quick. That was quickest so far. Any questions you can think of, and it doesn't have to be specifically about what we're talking about. If you've just got a random, I love random.
Could be about the whiskey.
Or Dale's kilt.
Thank you. Hello? Okay. It's a question for Michael, actually. Michael, you mentioned change as being a separate discipline to project management, which is something we're kind of dealing with at the moment in work. Do you expect your PMs to be both a change and a project manager, or do you have separate change manager roles in the way you run things?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think a lot of project managers do understand the change management requirement, and we actually had to fight for that We established the competency of project management because we got things done, and the C-suite could see there was that need. The C-suite's view on change management is you tell people what to do and then they should do it. We could see that you're not going to get project adoption without this discipline. Now, a project manager can become quite schizophrenic if they have to be the good cop and the bad cop. So the bad cop is usually the driver, getting things done. The good cop is the change manager that actually wants people to want to get things done. So that's the exact reason why we split the discipline, and I think they are both actually, in their own right, are separate disciplines. But from a project leadership aspect, so your project manager is not just a driver, they do actually need to have leadership capabilities. And by understanding the aspect of stakeholder engagement and the importance of getting that done, that is where they can bridge that gap for change management. And sometimes on a smaller project, you don't have a dedicated change manager. But for a complex project, we certainly do have them working together.
Thanks. And do you have a specific change methodology that you follow?
Yep. The ProSci methodology is the backbone of the methodology. Similar to PMBOK and Prince2 is the backbone of our project management methodology, but we do customize that. Not major changes, but customize it. And I mean, it links to some of the discussion we had about connecting. It's important to understand that you're delivering a project into an organization, so you have to be in tune with your organization's culture. And that's exactly where the benefit of change management comes in as well.
Yeah, ProSci, by the way, is fantastic. We've had Tim Creasy on a couple of times, and he's one of our highest downloaded episodes. So if you want to go look out for Tim Creasy, he's on there. And I think tomorrow night we're recording with ProSci again.
They love to be involved. But it's a great question, because change itself is, whilst it's an important endeavor, it doesn't necessarily carry the same weight as a PMO or some of the other C-suite roles, and it kind of gets sideswiped as part of a delivery. It's like our change is just part of the PM's job to just get it done, but it's actually not. It's creating space for change to happen, and there's a bit of a gap there when you're leaping from one platform to the next. So that's a really good question. Any more questions from the crowd? One here? It's like a proper lecture now, isn't it?
A bit of a challenging question, sorry. You mentioned a couple of times about your age and that AI, I'm going to get the youngsters to do that. Being in the same decade, I firmly believe that's not the approach that we can take at our age, because as the guy said this morning, AI's here now. How would we go about changing your mind?
Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
Whiskey?
Yeah,
I'll have a sip involved. Yeah, and maybe that's just my own limitation, saying, and I have to think back when my dad was my age, he had to start using a computer at work. I mean, prior to that, he would have handwritten notes, pass it to the secretary, who would type it up. So that was the hurdle he had to overcome in his work environment. I think you've actually nailed it on the head. That's my hurdle. And I mean, we face many challenges in terms of the PMO world. And maybe that'll just keep me going the next 10 years, is to not be defeatist about it and say, and leave it to the youngsters, but rather embrace it and say, well, how can I be a vehicle for this change? Because you're quite right, it's here already. And yeah, I think you've given me something to think about. So great question.
Yeah, fantastic question, fantastic answer. So well done.
Can I just help him out a bit? Because it's not all your fault. When we get older, we become comfortable. That is not necessarily your fault. It's just by age. I still listen to records that I listened to 20 years ago, because you get comfortable with certain things habitually. But to break the mold is the practice. It's the same thing of doing things that are uncomfortable, going to the gym, having ice baths, whatever you do, eating healthy. These are all habitual behaviors that we need to bring into our lives to make them more productive. But yeah, it's a great question. Volunteering for a podcast. He's very uncomfortable now. He's hard. Is there any easy questions? We got one?
Yep.
Oh, over here. Very good. We should do more lives. This is great.
I don't think it's going to be easy, but leading on from that lady's question. Age was mentioned a little bit up until this point. Val, a question for you really. How have you come to the opinion that young people aren't very resilient in the workplace? Because my experience has been the opposite. So I'm just really interested to hear how you've arrived at that point.
It's a great question as well. It's not a general statement, so I don't want to offend anyone here who is younger than me. It's just a different attitude to life rather than resilience. So when we talk about resilience, we talk about grit, practicing things that are hard and doing them often. Not necessarily something, and I think you mentioned it, about work-life balance, which is a new thing. Because to do things hard and get good at them meant that you had to sacrifice something else. But the new way of working is that work-life balance is important, that your job is in your whole life, and that's how the people that I've worked with that are younger than me receive it. So it's more about how do we cooperate, coexist, and operate in a high kind of tension environment. We usually do have unrealistic goals. And I'll be honest, every PMO I've ever worked for has always been under the pump, without doubt. And the people that go into these environments, especially the younger generation, they do struggle a little bit with that. So we want to make sure that we build an environment where they can thrive, noting that we have conflicting kind of priorities when it comes to work-life balance, rather than saying they don't have any resilience, because I would never say that. My daughter would kill me. But they do have a different aspect on how they build up resilience, or you said patience, which I think maybe is a better word for the younger generations rather than resilience, which is where I come from.
If I add to that as well, I think all of us, when we were a bit younger, we had to build up resilience, right? You're not born with resilience. I mean, if you're born with resilience, your baby wouldn't cry, right? Because they'd be resilient. They'd be like, oh, this is fine. You know, I've got an itchy bum, it's okay. But you're not born with resilience, so you have to build it up, right? You have to. Great question, though. And I think it's our jobs to support them, by the way. I think we've got another question up top.
They're flowing now, see? It was that itchy bum comment.
The itchy bum comment, yeah.
Just carrying on AI stuff. So it's not a question, but just I want to hear your thoughts. When we say AI for PMO, do you think it will be effective if we are talking about PMO in silos? Because AI is everywhere, right? So the entire ecosystem, whether it is starting from R&D, moving to supply, procurement, PMO, so should the entire ecosystem not function like a single unit, and then only AI will be effective, or we just talk about PMO in silos and then everybody is doing their own thing and they keep on sending the AI things, keep on sending the notifications and nobody cares about it? Because your thoughts?
So first response, I think PMOs should be that ecosystem for project delivery. If it's not, I think there's a problem, because PMOs should look at the full life cycle of projects, how that actually contributes to organizational goals and strategies as well. So if the PMO is not part of that entire strategy and ecosystem, I think that's a problem to start off with. Then to answer your question more directly is, once you've got there, you naturally are looking at technology, not just AI, as part of the entire ecosystem. So I'd first look at what kind of PMO do you have? Does it incorporate everything in your organization? Because it should. It doesn't have to directly control or oversee everything, but it needs to consider all the moving parts to be effective. If it's not considering all those moving parts, I'd start there before even considering technology or AI.
Yeah, I agree. I've got to get my head around how AI can be used in the PMO space. I think, often our default is how it can be used to support the project manager in delivery. But within the PMO space, and maybe it was just the question you asked this morning, and you got an AI response to that. There's a lot of things that you phrase a question, it gives you a new perspective. And what I've actually found is that a lot of the C-suite have suddenly become PMO specialists just by doing a chat GPT question, what is project prioritization? And then I get a lecture on what project prioritization is. I think that's maybe where the role, it could be a good sounding board. Maybe that's Sunny, maybe that's the answer to the question, use it as a sounding board as opposed to a tool for delivery.
Yeah, I mean, AI told us this was a fantastic kitchen cabinet, I think.
Which it is. So my view is slightly interesting. So if something works seamlessly, you never see it. You never see it operate. Your mobile phone works, well, other than mine today, works seamlessly. Okay, it sends messages around, it bounces off towers, it works. The internet, it just works. For most of us, that's enough. Our TVs, they just work. So seamless technology is quite interesting. So when we think about AI for a project application, what we're trying to do is use it as a tool. And we talked about this morning in my keynote with Dale, about thinking of AI as another tool or application, which it is not. It is not this. What it is an enhancement or an augmentation or an aggregation of yourself in digital form. It is your digital copy. It will be as smart as you are if you let it be. So you can make really dumb applications with AI to control systems that don't matter, or control departments that don't really matter, or you can have a seamless integration and your digital self will talk to other digital selves. Okay, we're going full future for you, you're welcome. That's the whiskey talking. But there'll be seamless interaction at the agency level for applications. So you won't need to worry about those types of problems. We're going to see ourselves elevate above those problems and deal with more of the communication, the change challenges that we have between personnel rather than the transactional of the tools and the systems that talk to each other, which will be really exciting. The other thing to leave you with that is we can test this right now in labs, in scenarios. We are doing it right now all around the world. So the acceleration of that concept can be tested 1,000 times. If you've ever done a Monte Carlo simulation, put your hand up. Okay, so 20,000, 30,000 iterations, you get a distribution, we can work out which solutions will work best for your problem today. And that's completely a massive step change. We're not incremental anymore. We're a different organization. That was too much. I apologize. That was too much. I'll pull that back.
Hopefully that gives you an answer.
Any more questions, guys? One over here.
I love these questions, by the way, Val.
Made our job easier, didn't it?
Yeah,
Hey?
we don't have to ask any.
And Michael's still here, doing a great job.
Fantastic so far, thank you. Really enjoying it. Due to the importance of the PMO in delivering strategic initiatives whilst also keeping the lights on in an organisation, making sure you're balancing the change versus BAU, do you feel that there's becoming more of a need to have whatever the title is, your head of PMO sitting on the corporate boards?
Can I go?
Yeah, it's a question I've grappled with, not because I'm interested in elevating myself into that role, but it comes down to the fact that often executives, by extrapolation boards, don't actually understand the project world and don't understand the delivery mechanisms. Yes, they want to see things get done and strategies implemented. So I think that voice at the C-suite or on the board would be a voice of reason. I also often say that the PMO graveyard is full because you have a change of executive that actually say, well, we can just get stuff done ourselves. We don't need a PMO. I think if you've got a strong sponsor that understands the role of the PMO on the C-suite, even your CEO, which I've been fortunate to have had, that actually becomes your voice. But then it's about connecting with that executive in order to get your message across. So to answer the question, I think it would be a great idea. It would really support our profession and our discipline if we almost had let's call it a chief portfolio officer role. That would be fantastic. It's not going to happen that easily unless you've got a really progressive organization, but that would be, in my mind, the way to go.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I mean, I've been a big advocate for PMO to have a seat at the table, and more times than not, PMO ends up where? Working for finance, commercial, where else? Something else, right? And unfortunately, the same thing from a translation perspective is their priorities are not our priorities. So when you try to speak project to finance, you get a different outcome. So it's very important that we do elevate PMO. But PMO needs something substantial to hold on to. It can't just be delivery. So PMO, and I think if you're at the keynote this morning, we talked about the governance role. We should be positioning ourselves, not just as a project translator, but AI and whatever else comes forward, governor of all things that make projects work, because we are the glue, effectively. PMOs, if you think about them, whilst they are horizontal, yes, they're actual verticals. We talk to every single person at every single level of that project, generally. We are an integrator, so we have such intelligence, such information. Now, how do we get that to the top? And that's our next challenge, or it's been our challenge for a while, actually.
Yeah, it's fascinating, actually. If you think, I was chatting earlier to a few in the crowd, and you know, if you look at other professions, you look at the engineers or you look at the accountants in an organization, no one really tells them how to do their job. Yet when you're in PMO, everyone wants to tell you how to do your job, right?
100%.
So we do, I think, need to elevate the PMO In what way, shape, or form? I think it depends, and I think you gave a fantastic answer. But I think the key is that there's this element of PMO don't know what they're doing, and actually we do know what we're doing. We just need to be recognized as a profession like you recognize engineering, accounting, etc., etc.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to that, working in the healthcare industry, work with a lot of doctors that are part of project teams. And I mean, the phrase is, trust me, I'm a doctor. So, you know, they expect you've sort of grown up saying, well, you're an expert, you can do it. I'd like to turn that around and say, trust me, I'm the PMO, because that's the expertise that we bring.
Absolutely. Great question. Well, there's a round of applause there. I think we had one here.
Michael's going to start a podcast after this. You know.
I know. Yeah. Project Chatter South Africa when you go back, or Netherlands.
Yeah, back in Cape Town, maybe there's something we can happy.
Yeah, we can do a collaboration.
Fantastic sharing a stage with these guys. I didn't know that would happen when I put my name in the box earlier, but yeah, really great conversation.
It's been great. Yeah.
Hiya. So, and thank you also. I've really enjoyed this afternoon. The journey. So I'm using ChatGPT quite a lot. I'm very proud of myself. And where it works really well for me is that I can say I want to understand some stuff to set me up to write a report or write a paper. And it gives me the basics. And because of my experience, I can then apply it and do something with it. And I know whether it's right or not, if that makes sense. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't think you need to have done this for a long time. But you do, I think, need to somehow have some practical experience so you know what the theory means, so you're not just getting the instant answer. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's a good one. And it's a dangerous one because there is something intrinsically linked to the way generations think about problems. So instant gratification is one of these problems, actually, where we put in a problem into ChatGPT, we get an instant answer that feels really good. But then there's this quarantining bit that needs to happen. How do we make sure what we're looking at is the actual right thing? Because it is so new. I don't know if you know this with ChatGPT, it doesn't know how to say, I don't know. So it doesn't know how to go, a bit like a child. It will just come up with whatever relevant answer makes sense. Is that a kitchen bench? Yeah, that's a kitchen bench. So there is some trepidation during this, I would call it a growth phase of AI adoption, where we're testing AI and AI is testing us. So for the short term, yes, I think you need to have, and I think in the keynote this morning we talked about fact checking, that there needs to be people with experience who've done this the old way to kind of guide in the new ways of working. And that's always been the case, actually, from the guys off the floor, the trades. You know, and I remember when I first started projects, the guys were using string on the wall to link up nodes. Well, what are you talking about? I just want to deliver a project. So I learned a very strange way because the guy that I learned from was 60 years old. And he came from the trade floor and he'd learned all the old ways of doing things and didn't trust a computer, actually. Still used a calculator to check, and it was pins and needles for my eyes watching him check something that had just come out of a computer, and I was like, it's ready to go, Craig. It's ready. He's like, no, I'm just checking. So I'm actually on that side. It's funny because I'm super, tech savvy, and I love tech, and I love trying it out. And it's not as hard as you think to be that person. But I am also consciously reserving the fact that it's not right yet, and it needs that level of experience and tenacity around controls. And you'll see a lot of the companies these days, big tech companies, are trying to figure out responsible AI frameworks, methods. Most government agencies now have someone looking at this, because once it is unboxed and it is relatively fast, there's no way to really box this back in, and we're going to be in a position where everyone's just running out of, the whole internet will just be AI spewing out AI, listening to AI, reading AI. It'll be a completely different kind of tool set. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think the debate is out there in terms of how do we balance, using the tool. And we've had this debate before on the podcast where if you had an AI tool that you could just input the scope and generates the schedule for you, you do need to have an element of, I know how to put a schedule together, I know how to do a forward pass and a backward pass, and yes, that's right at this stage. AI might get there, we don't know. It probably will at some stage, but we do have to have the ability to understand that what it's outputting is correct. So in my simple South African brain, I always say there's two great elements, advantages of using AI, and for all intents and purposes, I think when we think about AI these days, a lot of people think ChatGPT. There are other forms of AI, just to make that note. But when it comes to large language models, I think you can look at it as either an automation tool or something that generates something for you that you didn't have before. And if we look at it as an automation tool, it gets you to the answer quicker. It doesn't give you the answer. And if we just keep it simple, simplicity, old Leo this morning, keep it simple, it's automating, it's getting us something quicker, we're putting the scope documentation in, it's giving us a WBS, we still have to look at it and understand, is that correct? Is it breaking the work down correctly?
Yeah, and I mean, I think obviously nothing beats expertise and experience. To answer your question is maybe AI can speed things up. You don't need to be in the trenches for 20 years to get to a level of experience. You can use AI in that way to get to a greater level of expertise quicker, but not with a complete reliance on it.
Great question. Great questions. There we go. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey.
This feels weird, sorry.
It looks weird.
Yeah, just on the point about closing the gap. So the company I work for, we've had Copilot for a year. And so we have some simple policies. So one policy, I can give you an example of two. One is if you use Gen AI to generate some data or a summary, before you send it to someone, you have to check it. And if you're sending it to someone, it's coming from you. It's not coming from Gen AI. So if it's wrong, it's you. So that's a simple governance policy you can have. The other example is we have a policy that you cannot use Gen AI, for example, to judge someone for their appraisal. So you can't use it to do behavioural analysis. So I thought that was useful to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Very good. I think we've got time for maybe one. Oh, there we go. Look.
Hello.
Hit us.
Right, so I remember when me and Eileen came on your podcast, right? And it gets to the end of the podcast and really put us on the spot. So, boys, I want to know from all the esteemed guests that you've had on your podcast, and there's been many and they've been varied, I want to know from both of you, what has been the most kind of jaw-dropping insight that you've had from somebody on your podcast that's it's here now and actually really changed the way that you might think, or you've done something, and hopefully that suitably puts you back on the spot. But thank you very much.
Mine's pretty easy, and great question, thank you. And it's a lot to distill, because there's so many fantastic guests we've had on the podcast. I'd struggle to pick out my favorite guest, because every single one has come on to share and pay it forward, as we say. The podcast is a philanthropic endeavor where we don't get paid for that. We just want to share inside information freely. So, but the one thing for me personally that I always come back to, Lindsay, is Vin Zhang and communication skills. Because the power of your voice is amazing. We don't recognize how powerful we are. And our voice is a conduit to not just share information, but to work together to build relationships, to share. And so it's non-PMO related, but it actually is, because PMO's key responsibility for me is to create that perspective we spoke about earlier, and to add contrast and context to the information. And oftentimes it's using our voice and how we do that. You can often pick up from someone when you chat to them Are they a bit more introverted? Are they shy? Can I trust this person? Your voice plays a big, big part. And so for me, Vin Jiang and his message on how to use this instrument that every single one of us have was really, really important.
Yeah, that's a good one. You stole mine. No, that's... You said it so well. You're right. So something about communication is a fantastic podcast because you can talk forever about it. And it's something you can take home and you can practice. The other one that sticks in my mind, which I know you know what I'm going to say, is Dave Snowden.
Yeah,
and Dave Snowden is just a remarkable individual. Someone who has effectively worked with people like Peter Drucker and others and kind of forged his own Welsh way into making different frameworks work. And he talked about complex, complicated, simple systems and how to respond to each in different remarkable ways. And the way he tells it, and something about communication as well, the way he tells it blew me away. Dale and I, I'll be honest, we didn't know how to ask him a question. We just realized, you know, when you're in the room and there's someone super intelligent and you're just intimidated by that. I remember having this feeling and moment when Dave Snowden was on the call. I said, holy crap, we should have studied for this one. Because all of our podcasts are unscripted. But he was so remarkable in telling how you would use storytelling to build qualitative analysis of projects. And you say more of this and less of that. And he used topography maps to kind of look at heat maps of different stories in different ways to see how you can move culture and fix complex problems. Because we talk about complexity, but actually it's very hard to solve complexity because you don't know what the outcomes are. When you move something, something else happens. You don't know how to predict that. That's very uncomfortable for someone in PMO when we are trying to predict the future. We're obviously asked to do that. So Dave did a great job of that. We had him back a few times just to boggle our minds, and we realized, yep, we're actually stupid. He's certified that for us. But that was the second good podcast. I think we're running short of time now, so
yeah,
any
absolutely.
other questions? I think we're done.
I think that's enough. You can obviously ask us questions after this, but it's been absolutely fantastic. You've been a fantastic audience. You've been so engaging. Give yourselves a round of applause as well.
And Michael, give Michael a round of applause,
Michael,
please.
you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Before we let you go, any final thoughts you just want to leave the audience with?
I think just to say thank you for being a kind audience. I didn't know what I was letting myself in for, but as I said, fantastic to share the stage with you. And thanks for listening to my story. I am passionate about the PMO and what it offers, and it was great to have this opportunity.
Fantastic. So, folks, that is the end of this episode. But remember, if you like what you've heard, do help us, pay it forward, and share a link to this episode on your favorite social media. Thank you once again to our guest, Michael, and thank you all for listening and being here with us. That's the end of the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.